Teresa Albright. I'm a pastoral associate who ministers here at Visitation Church in Kansas City, Missouri. And during this time of shelter in place, the church is still open for personal devotional prayer. Even though we cannot come together for the sacrament of the Eucharist, you are very much welcome to come in to this parish home of yours and pray. We are very fortunate to have a great treasury of spiritual practices and devotional prayer in our Catholic tradition. First, what is devotional prayer? Devotional prayer is a personal prayer that grows out of and promotes the faith of the people. So, what is a popular piety or devotional prayer that probably all Catholics know about is the Rosary. That is a devotional prayer. Some of you might pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, which is a devotional prayer that grew out of the faith of St. Faustina, a Polish woman from the last century. But my favorite devotional prayer is the Stations of the Cross. And the Stations of the Cross were very impactful for me, especially as a young child. I think that the images were very moving to me as a child of Jesus' suffering and death along the path to his crucifixion. The action of actually walking the Stations of the Cross, I think, imprinted on me the meaningfulness of Jesus' death at a very young age. So I especially want to share this with our families today too. And we do have a parish family that's going to help us pray the Stations of the Cross today. I want to give you a very quick little background about Stations of the Cross. It really began in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land, several centuries ago, where early Christian pilgrims would travel to Jerusalem and walk a path, literally walk a path through the old city that tradition told us was the path that Jesus took on his way to his crucifixion in Calvary. And so pilgrims would go to the Holy Land, and eventually these traditions of certain scenes from the Passion narrative were focused in on by pilgrims. And they would stop at certain sections along the way and meditate on these scenes. And these eventually became the Stations of the Cross for us. Fast forward a couple of centuries, and the Franciscans in the late Middle Ages took this pilgrimage in Jerusalem and brought it into kind of a spiritual pilgrimage to the countries in Europe, where they would erect these scenes of the Stations of the Cross along the roadside. And so, just your average citizen could be walking down the roadside and meditate on these scenes from the Passion narrative of Jesus' suffering and death. Fast forward another couple centuries, and eventually these stations were being placed in Catholic churches. And so you might actually find some of the Stations of the Cross now even in Episcopalian or Lutheran. Some Methodist churches might have them, but every Catholic church has some form of Stations of the Cross that line the rim of the sanctuary area, or the nave. And it might be in the form of paintings, or statues, or reliefs, but they're the same scenes from the Passion narrative. And interestingly, not all of the Stations of the Cross are scripturally based, but they have been passed down to us by the personal faith of the people. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our parish family, the Larsons, who are going to help us pray the Stations today. So we have Christy and Ryan and Caroline and Ellie, who are going to pray the Stations of the Cross for us today. One of the things that I have come to incorporate into my personal prayer of the Stations of the Cross is the holding with me in prayer all those who are suffering today. So I'd especially for myself like to hold up in prayer as I walk these Stations of the Cross all those parents who have lost children or are separated from their children, whether through death or any other kind of circumstance, I especially want to keep in mind 2 of our RCIA candidates who this week are remembering children that they lost to death this time last year. So I'm going to be praying for Brenda and her family and John and his family during the stations. And if you'd like to comment about who you will be maybe praying on behalf of, who is suffering right now in the world, who as part of our body of the body of Christ, who is suffering as we enter Holy Week. So let's just prepare ourselves for prayer.
First station, Jesus is condemned to death. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke. A 3rd time he said to them, "Why, what evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and handed Jesus over as they wished.
I see you, Jesus, standing before the governor who tries 3 times to oppose the will of the people and finally decides not to decide. I see you standing before the crowd. They are asked 3 times, and each time they decide against you. The crowd, in other words, everyone and no one. Hidden in the throng, we lose our individuality. We become the voice of 1,000 other voices. Even before we deny you, we deny ourselves, diluting our own responsibility in the seething tide of a faceless crowd. And yet we are responsible, misled by the rabble-rousers, by the evil that insinuates itself with a deceitful and deafening voice. It is we, all humanity, who condemn you. Today we are horrified at so great an injustice. We don't want to be part of it. But in this way, we forget all those times when we ourselves were ready to save Barabbas over you, all those times when our ears were deaf to the voice of goodness, when we preferred not to see the injustice all around us. In that crowded square, it would have been enough for a single heart to hesitate, for a single voice to be raised against the 1,000 voices of evil. Whenever life sets before us a decision to be made, let us be reminded of that square and that mistake. Let us allow our hearts to hesitate and command our voices to speak out.
I ask you, Lord, keep watch over our decisions. Bring them clarity by your light, and lead us to ask the right questions. Evil alone never doubts. Trees that sink their roots in the ground, whether if watered by evil, but you have set our roots in heaven, and our branches on earth to know and follow you. Second station, Jesus receives his cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Mark. Jesus called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it.
I see you, Jesus, crowned with thorns as you receive your cross. You accept it as you always accept everything and everyone. They burden you with its wood, heavy and rough. Yet you do not rebel, you do not reject that unjust and humiliating instrument of torture. You take it up and begin to walk, carrying it on your shoulders. How many times have I rebelled in anger against burdens I have received, viewing them as heavy or unjust? That is not your way. You are only a few years older than I. Nowadays we would consider you still young, but you are accepting. You take seriously what life offers you, every opportunity it presents, as if you wanted to go to the very heart of things, to discover that there is always something beyond appearances, something remarkable and meaningful. Thanks to you, I understand that this is a cross of salvation and liberation, a cross that bears me up whenever I stumble, a yoke that is easy, a burden that is light. The scandal of the death of God's Son, a sinner's death, a criminal's death, grants us the grace to discover amid sorrow and resurrection, amid suffering, your glory, amid anguish, your salvation, and the cross itself, which speaks to us of humiliation and pain, is now revealed, thanks to your sacrifice, as a promise that from every death new life will arise, and in every dark place light will shine. And so we can cry out, "Hail, Holy Cross, our one hope."
I ask you, Lord, that the light of the cross, the symbol of our faith, we may accept our sufferings and enlightened by your heart, embrace our own crosses, made glorious by your death and resurrection. Give us the grace to look back on our story of our lives and rediscover in them your love for us.
Third station, Jesus falls for the first time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the book of the prophet Isaiah. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted.
I see you, O Jesus, making your way to Calvary, bearing our sins. I see you fall, hands and knees on the ground in pain. With what great humility did you fall, and what great humiliation you now endure. Your human nature, your true manhood, is clearly seen in this fragment of your life. The cross you carry is a heavy one. You need help to carry it, but when you fall to the ground, no one helps you. Instead, people make fun of you. They laugh at the sight of a God who falls. Perhaps they are disappointed. Perhaps they had a mistaken idea of who you are. Sometimes we think that having faith in you means never falling in life. Together with you, I also fall, and my ideas with me, those ideas I had about you, how fragile they were. I see you, Jesus, as you grit your teeth and, in complete surrender to the love of the Father, you get up and resume your journey. With these, your first, faltering steps beneath the cross, Jesus, you remind me of a child taking his first steps in life. Losing balance, he falls and cries, but then keeps going. He trusts in the hands of his parents and does not give up. He is afraid, but he keeps walking because trust is stronger than fear. By your courage, you teach us that our failures and falls must never halt our journey, and that we always have a choice to give up or to get up in union with you.
I ask you, Lord, give us young people the courage to get up after every fall, as you did on the way to Calvary. Grant that we may appreciate the great and precious gift of life, and that our failures and falls may never be a reason for throwing it away. We know that if we trust in you, we will be able to get up again and find the strength to keep going always.
Third station, Fourth station, Jesus meets his mother. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke. Simon blessed them and said to his mother, Mary, this child is destined for the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be opposed, so that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too.
I see you, Jesus, as you meet your mother. Mary is there, making her way through the crowded street, with many persons all around her. The only thing that makes her different from the others is the fact that she is there to accompany her son, something we see every day, mothers accompanying their children to school or to the doctor or bringing them to work. Yet Mary is different from other mothers. She is accompanying her son to his death. To see your own child die is the worst, the most unnatural thing that anyone could imagine for a person, and it is all the more atrocious if that child is dying at the hands of the law. How unnatural and unjust is this scene before my eyes. My own mother instilled in me a sense of justice and trust in life, but what I see today has nothing to do with that. It is senseless and painful. I see you, Mary, as you look at your poor child. He bears on his back the marks of the scourge, and he is forced to carry the weight of the cross. Soon, no doubt, in his exhaustion, he will fall beneath it. Yet you knew that sooner or later this would happen. It was prophesied to you, but now that it is taking place, everything is different. That is how things are. We are always unprepared before the harsh realities of life. Mary, now you are sorrowful as any woman would be in your place, but you do not despair. Your eyes are undimmed. You are not forlorn and downcast. You are radiant, even in your sorrow, because you have hope. You know that this journey of your son will not be a one-way trip. You know, you feel, as only mothers can feel, that soon you will see him again.
I ask you, Lord, help us always to keep before our eyes the example of Mary, who accepted the death of her son as a great mystery of salvation. Help us act with our gaze fixed on the good of others and die in the hope of the resurrection. Conscious that we are never alone or abandoned by God or Mary, in the loving mother ever concerned for her child.
Simon helps Jesus to carry the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke. As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and they laid the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus.
I see you, Jesus, crushed beneath the weight of the cross. I see that you can't do it alone. At your moment of greatest need, you remain alone, without those who called themselves your friends. Judas betrayed you, Peter denied you, the others abandoned you. Yet suddenly, there is an unexpected encounter with someone unknown, a mere passerby, who perhaps had only heard about you and not followed you. Yet now here he is at your side, shoulder to shoulder, to share your yoke. His name is Simon, and he is a stranger come from afar, from Cyrene. For him today, something unexpected happens, which becomes an encounter. Every day we experience any number of encounters and conflicts, especially those of us who are young people. We continually encounter new experiences and new people. In unexpected meetings, in accidental events, in strange surprises, there are hidden opportunities to love, to see the best in our neighbors, even those whom seem different from ourselves. At times, Jesus, we feel like you, abandoned by those we thought were our friends, crushed by a heavy burden. Yet we must not forget that there is a Simon of Cyrene ready to carry our cross. We must remember that we are not alone, and in that realization, we find the strength to take up the cross of those around us. I see you, Jesus. Now you seem to be experiencing a bit of relief. You manage momentarily to catch a breath, now that you are no longer alone. I also see Simon, who knows if he has realized that your yoke is light, and if he appreciates the meaning of this unexpected event in his life.
I ask you, Lord, to give each of us courage to be like Simon of Cyrene, who takes up your cross and follows in your steps. May each of us be sufficiently humble and strong to take up the crosses of those who we meet. Grant that we feel alone, we may recognize on our journey a Simon of Cyrene who will halt and help bear our burden. Grant that we may see the best in every person and be open to all different kinds of encounter. I ask that each of us may unexpectedly find himself or herself walking at your side.
Sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the book of the prophet Isaiah. We had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity, and as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account.
I see you, Jesus, wretched and barely recognizable, treated like the least of men. You walk, faltering, to your death. You face bleeding and disfigured, yet, as always, meek and humble, looking up. A woman steps out of the crowd to see at close hand that face of yours which, perhaps, had spoken so often to her soul and which she loved. She sees its pain and wants to help. They do not let her pass. There are so many of them, all too many, and they are armed. But to her, none of that matters. She is determined to reach you, and for a moment she manages to touch you, caressing you with her veil. Hers is the power of tenderness. Your eyes meet for a second, face meets face. We know nothing about that woman, Veronica, or her story. She earns heaven with a simple gesture of charity. She approaches you, sees your suffering face, and loves it even more than before. Veronica does not stop at appearances, which today are so important in our image-conscious society. She loves unconditionally a face that is unsightly, marred, unlovely, and imperfect. That face, your face, Jesus, in its very imperfection, shows the perfection of your love for us.
I ask you, Jesus, grant me the strength to approach others, to approach every person, young or old, poor or rich, friends or strangers, and to see your face in all of those faces. Help me never hesitate in coming to the aid of my neighbor in whom you dwell, even as Veronica came to help you on your way to Calvary.
Seventh station, Jesus falls for the second time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the book of the prophet Isaiah. By a perversion of justice he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him with pain.
I see you, Jesus, fall once more before my eyes. By falling again, you show me that you are a man, a true man. And I see you get up again, more resolute than before. You do not get up with pride. There is no pride in your gaze, there is love. And continuing on your journey, getting up after each fall, you proclaim your resurrection. You show that you are ready, once again and always, to bear on your bleeding shoulders the burden of human sin. By falling again, you sent us a clear message of humility. You fell on the ground, on that humus from which we humans are born. We are dust, we are mud, we are nothing in comparison to you. But you want to become like us, and now you show yourself close to us, with our troubles, our weaknesses, the sweat of our brow. Now, on this Friday, as often happens to us, you overwhelmed by sorrow. But you have strength to go forward. You are not afraid of the difficulties that lie ahead, and you know that at the end of your struggle, there is heaven. You get up precisely to get there, to open before us the gates of your kingdom. What a strange king you are, a king lying in the dust. Suddenly, I am thrown into confusion. We are not worthy of comparing our efforts and our falls to yours. Your falls are a sacrifice, the greatest sacrifice that my eyes and all of history will ever be able to see.
I ask you, Lord, grant that we may be ready to get up after falling, that we may learn from our failures. Remind us that when it's our turn to make mistakes and fall, if we but stay with you and hold fast to your hand, we can learn to get up again. Grant that we, young people, may bring to everyone your message of humility. The future generations may open your eyes to you and learn to understand your love. Teach us to help those who are suffering and fall beside us, and wipe their sweat and stretch out a hand to lift them up.
Eighth station, Jesus
because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke, a number of the people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breast and wailing for him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
I see you and I hear you, Jesus, as you speak to the women whom you meet on the way to your death. Each day you would meet any number of people. You would approach everyone and talk to all. Now you speak with the women of Jerusalem who look at you and weep. I too am one of those women. But you, Jesus, speak words of warning that for me are striking. They are so concrete and direct. At first, they might appear harsh and severe, but that is because they are so direct. Nowadays, we are used to a world where people beat around the bush. A cool hypocrisy veils and filters what we really mean. We are unwilling to correct others. We prefer to leave them to their own devices, not bothering to challenge them for their own good. Whereas you, Jesus, speak to the women like a father, also admonishing them. Your words are words of truth, and they are forthright for the soul's sake of correction, not judgment. Yours is a language different from the one we speak. You always speak with humility, and you go straight to the heart of the matter. In this meeting, your last before the cross, we see once more your boundless love for the least, the marginalized. Women in those days were not considered worthy of being spoken to, whereas you, in your kindness, are truly revolutionary.
I ask you, Lord, grant that together with women and men in this world, I may be ever more charitable towards those in need, even as you were. Give them all the strength to go against the grain, to enter authentic contact with others, building bridges and not enclosing ourselves in the selfishness that leads us to the souldown of sin.
Station, Jesus falls for the third time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the book of the prophet Isaiah. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of all of us.
I see you, Jesus, as you fall for the third time. Twice now you have fallen, and twice you have gotten up. By now there are no limits to your struggle and your pain. Now, in this third and last fall, you seem completely overwhelmed. How many times in everyday life do we fall? We fall so often that we lose count, yet we always hope that each fall will be the last, because we need the courage of hope to face suffering. When a person falls that many times, ultimately all strength fails and all hope vanishes. I imagine myself beside you, Jesus, as you make your way to your death. It is hard to think that you are the Son of God himself. Someone has already tried to help you, but now you are exhausted, at a standstill, paralyzed. It seems that you cannot possibly go any farther. Unexpectedly, however, I see you begin to walk once more. Yes, you are walking to your death, but you want to do so to the very end. Perhaps this love What I understand is that it makes no difference how many times we fall. There will always be one last time, perhaps the worst, the most terrible trial, when we are called to find the strength to endure to the end of the journey. For Jesus, the end is the crucifixion, the apparent absurdity of death, which nonetheless reveals a deeper meaning, a more sublime purpose, that of saving us all.
I ask you, Lord, grant us every day the courage to go forward on our journey. Grant that we may receive to the very end the hope and the love that you have given us. May everyone comfort the challenge of life with strength and fidelity which were yours in the final moments of your journey to death on the cross.
Tenth station, Jesus is stripped of his garments. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to John. When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. They also took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top.
I see you, Jesus, naked as I have never seen you before. They have stripped you of your garments, Jesus, and are casting dice for them. In the eyes of these men, you have lost the last shred of your remaining dignity, your one possession on this, your journey of suffering. At the beginning of time, your Father had sewn garments for men to clothe them in dignity. Now, men strip that garment off your back. I see you, Jesus, and I see a young migrant, his body ravaged, who arrives in a land that all too often is heartless, ready to strip off his garment, his one treasure, and to sell it. To leave him alone with his cross like yours, alone with his disfigured skin like yours, alone with his eyes brimming with tears of pain like yours. Yet there is something we often forget about dignity. It is found beneath your skin. It is part of you, and it will always be with you, all the more at this moment in this nakedness. The nakedness in which we are born is the same as the nakedness with which the earth will receive us in the evening of our lives, from one mother to another. And now, here on this hill, your mother is also present. Once again, she sees you naked. I see you and I understand the grandeur and the splendor of your dignity, the dignity of every man, which no one will ever be able to erase.
I ask you, Lord, grant that all of us acknowledge the dignity belonging to our nature. Even when we find ourselves naked and alone before ourselves, grant that we may always see the dignity of others, respect it, and defend it. We ask you to grant our courage needed to understand ourselves as more the clothing we wear and accept our own nakedness. It reminds us of our poverty, with which you fell in love, even to give you your life for.
11th station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke, when they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing."
I see you, Jesus, stripped of everything. They wanted to punish you, an innocent person, by nailing you to the wood of the cross. What would I have done in your place? Would I have had the courage to acknowledge your truth, my truth? You had the strength to bear the weight of the cross, to meet with disbelief, to be condemned for your provocative words. Today, we can barely swallow a critical comment, as if every word was meant to hurt us. You did not stop before death. You believed deeply in your mission, and you put your trust in your Father. Today, in the world of the internet, we are so conditioned by everything that circulates on the web. There are times when I doubt even my own words. But your words are different. They are powerful in your weakness. You have forgiven us. You held no grudge. You taught us to offer the other cheek, and you kept going, even to the total sacrifice of yourself. I look all around and I see eyes glued to telephone screens, people trolling the social networks in order to nail others for their every mistake, with no possibility of forgiveness. People ruled by anger, screaming their hatred of one another for the most futile reasons. I look at your wounds and I realize now that I would not have had your strength. But I am seated here at your feet, and I strip myself of all hesitation. I get up in order to be closer to you, even if by a fraction of an inch.
I ask you, Lord, that in the face of good I may be ready to recognize it, that in the face of injustice I may find the courage to take my life in my hands, to act differently. Grant that I may set free from all the fears that like nails immobilize me, and I keep me from the life you have desired and prepared for us.
Twelfth station. Jesus dies on the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to Luke. It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent."
I see you, Jesus, but this time I would rather not see. You are dying. You were beautiful to behold when you spoke to the crowds. But now all that has come to an end. I do not want to see that end. All too often I have averted my gaze. I have become almost accustomed to flee pain and death. I have become numb to them. Your cry on the cross is loud and heartrending. We were not prepared for all that pain. We are not, nor will we ever be. Instinctively, we flee in panic before death and suffering. We reject them. We prefer to look away or to close our eyes. Instead, you remain there on the cross. You await us with open arms. You open our eyes. This is a great mystery, Jesus. You love us by dying, by suffering abandonment, by bestowing your spirit. by doing the Father's will, by withdrawing. You remain on the cross, and that is all. You do not try to explain the mystery of death, the destruction of all things. You do more. You cross over it completely in body and spirit, a great mystery, one that continues to question us and to unsettle us. It challenges us, and it invites us to open our eyes and see your love even in death. Indeed, even starting from death itself. It is there that you have loved us as we really are, truly and inevitably. It is there that we grasp, however imperfectly, your loving and authentic presence. We will always thirst for this, your closeness, for your being God with us.
I ask you, Lord, open my eyes to see you always in suffering and death, and the ending which is not real ending. Upset my complacency by your crosses. Shake off my drownedness. Challenge me always by disturbing mystery that overcomes death and grants life.
Station. Jesus is taken down from the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to John. After these things, Joseph, who was a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate to let him take away the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed his body. Nicodemus, who had at first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths, and according to the burial custom of the Jews.
I see you, Jesus, remaining there on the cross, a man of flesh and bones, with all their frailty, all their fears. How greatly did you suffer? It is an unbearable scene, perhaps because it is so drenched in humanity. This word is the key, the cipher of your journey, filled with such suffering and fatigue. It is your humanity that so often we forget to acknowledge in you and to seek in ourselves and in others. For we are all too caught up in a life ever more fast-paced, blind and deaf to the difficulties and the pain of others. I see you, Jesus. Now you are no longer there on the cross. You have gone back from where you came, laid upon the lap of the earth, upon the lap of your mother. The suffering is now past, vanished. This is the hour of mercy. Your lifeless body continues to speak of the strength with which you faced suffering. The meaning that you gave it is reflected in the eyes of those still there at your side and will always remain there in love, given and received. Before you and before us opens a new life, heavenly life, marked by the one thing that resists and remains unbroken by death. Love. You are here with us at every moment, at every step, in every uncertainty, in every shadow. While the shadow of the tomb lengthens on your body, held in the arms of your mother, I see you and I am afraid, yet I do not despair. I trust that the light, your light, will shine once again.
I ask you, Lord, keep hope ever alive in us and faith in unconditional love. Grant that we may continue our hearts inflamed to fix our gaze of eternal salvation and thus find refreshment and peace on our journey.
14th station. Jesus is laid in the tomb. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to John. Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. And so, because it was the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
No longer do I see you, Jesus. Now all is dark. Long shadows fall from the hills, and the Shabbat lamps light up Jerusalem, outside homes and within. They beat against the gates of heaven, closed and impregnable. For whom is all this solitude? Who can sleep on a night like this? The city is filled with the sound of children crying, mothers singing, soldiers making their rounds. The day is dying, and you alone are sleeping. Are you sleeping? And on what bed? What blanket hides you from the world? From afar, Joseph of Arimathea followed your steps, and now, with quiet steps, accompanies you in your sleep, withdraws you from the stares of the indignant and malicious. A sheet enfolds you in the chill of death and dries your blood, sweat, and tears. From the cross you descend, but lightly. Joseph carries you on his shoulder, but you are light. You no longer bear the burden of death, of hatred and anger. You sleep as you did on the warm straw when you were wrapped in swaddling clothes, and another Joseph held you in his arms. Just as there was no room for you then, so now you have nowhere to lay your head. Yet on Calvary, on the stiff neck of the wood, there grows a garden in which no one had yet been buried. Where have you gone off to, Jesus? Where have you descended, if not into the depths? Where, if not in a place still untouched, in an even tighter cell? You are caught in our snares, imprisoned in our sadness. Like us, you walked on earth, and now, like us, under the earth, you make room for yourself. I would like to run far away, but you are there within me. I need not to go out to seek you, because you are knocking at my door.
I ask you, Lord, you have revealed yourself not in glory, but not in the quiet of dark night. You not see the surface, but in secret, entering the depths. From the depths, hear our voice, grant that our awareness we may find rest in you, seen in our nature, in the love of your sleeping face, and the beauty we have lost.
Well, I'd like to thank the Larson family for helping us pray the Stations of the Cross. And thank you all for joining us today. I wish you a blessed Holy Week. We will be with you in spirit during our liturgies of Holy Week, and wishing you a meaningful Holy Thursday and Good Friday. And please do take the opportunity to come in here and pray, because this is your home. As Monsignor Offit mentioned, this parish is an extension of your domestic church. So I look forward to the time when I get to celebrate the Eucharist with you, and we love you very much. Thank you.